Do you like hearing about people who have been violently killed? Do you enjoy hearing an unhinged man with rapidly decreasing sanity talk about how fucking inept 99% of police officers are? Well, if so, you're in the right place. So get cozy, buckle your fuckles, and try not to cringe as I talk for the next hour and a half. We are now on level 13 of the ultimate true crime iceberg, but just for the uninitiated, if you're new here, there's all of this in what is probably somewhere around 14 hours of content. It's all in a really convenient playlist. It's in the up there part. So if you want to start there, go ahead and start there. Now, thank you for choosing this video and deciding to watch this video. Let's just fucking dive right on in. The Sorel fire. We're going to France, and normally I believe that French people deserve less, but this one's gonna be a little bit sad. The Sorel centers around France are, believe it or not, schools and homes for mentally ill teenagers. So, this ought to be really fun. 22 people, most of them mentally disturbed teenagers, died in a fire believed to have been set by arsonists at a school for children with psychiatric problems in southwest France, authorities said today. Now, do mind that I am reading a boomer-ass article. Today, as referred to in this article, is actually May 26, 1982. Now, a judicial inquiry was begun to explore the possibility that Tuesday, May 26th, 1982's fire at the Jean Sorel school was set deliberately by one of its students hours after many of them watched a television show called Should Psychiatric Hospitals Be Burned? Well, it appears that they came to a conclusion and answered that question themselves. Officials earlier said 10 people died and another 12 were missing, presumed to have, burned to death. Because the fire, which burned for 4 hours before firefighters could come, was not brought to control at any point at that time. Escape was your own fucking issue, so yeah, you're never gonna believe it. A later report that day said 21 bodies, 19 students and 2 female employees of the school, had been recovered, and it was believed the 22nd person who could not be accounted for was also dead. Many of the 90 youths housed at the school watched the program Monday night. Authorities said one or more of the students influenced by its title could have set the fire, which seems to be a weird thing to latch on to. It really just seems like the cops here, in typical police officer fashion, are trying to be lazy fucking assholes. Thanks, guys. Now, a 17-year-old resident of the hospital, identified as Laurent, was quoted as saying, "We are not assassins." Now, teenagers are kind of like sociopathic sometimes, especially that younger 13 to 15 age range is not even humans. But I doubt that they were like, I watched this show about how maybe we should burn psychiatric hospitals to the ground. Time to kill all of my friends. Fire inspectors said Wednesday that they were particularly puzzled by the speed with which a blaze raced through the school, leaving charred bodies in its wake. Believe it or not, accelerant is a thing, firefighters. There are fire extinguishers throughout and fire detectors each 2 yards, but none of these things did their job. One of the students who escaped the blaze, identified as Stephanie, said the pre-dawn fire lit up the sky like the rising sun. You could only hear the cries of the others, he said. There was smoke everywhere. Yeah, that must be a great way to wake up. You just come out and you fucking... You step outside, and your house is burning to the ground. All you can hear are the screams of your friends as they perish. Sounds like a wonderful morning. Moving away from France, which, as we all know, France as a nation deserves less, let's instead go to a seldom discussed area, China, specifically Hong'an County, and 7 murders that happened in a factory. Oh yeah. Speaking of these murders, it's 6 factory workers and 1 child, so this ought to be fun. Now, thank you to the user Loved Clarkson 3 years ago for writing out this detailed article. It's always very nice to be able to read an r/Unresolved Mysteries article about it, because unlike most small news networks and true crime podcasts, they care about delivering this information in an efficient manner, so I don't have to wait through an hour of repeating yourself and bullshit, or 30,000 ads. Anyway, on the morning of December 27, 2007, two workers, one named Wang Fao, one still marked anonymous but sometimes referred to as Wang's uncle, arrived at their job at a mom-and-pop lime factory in the Shanxi township of Huanggang City. Wang is not related to the other Wangs in this story, and his name is pronounced differently when not in pinyin, so I have changed his name to Yu for the sake of clarity. Feel free to think of him as Yu, or like Steve, if it suits you better. Okay, so Wang is Yu. Yu is Wang. Gotcha. Yu first found the wife of his boss, Chen Xiaorun, dead in a pool of blood at the gate of the lime kiln. Her throat was obviously slashed. A few feet further was his boss, Wang Shishu, also dead from what appeared to be a series of stab wounds to his neck and face. Yu ran further into the factory to the dormitory, where he discovered 5 more dead bodies, including one 9-year-old child named Wu Liangbo, and police later found a 7th body in a ditch located along the back exit of the plant. The victim had also been stabbed repeatedly. His body was found next to a motorcycle, suggesting he might have been trying to flee the massacre and had crashed or was waylaid. Those found dead in the dormitory were cousins of the Wangs, surnamed Wu, a husband and wife, that they had recently employed, on top of the couple's child. Alongside these bodies was 3 local hired workers. There's been a few write-ups that list this dormitory grouping as suspicious, but it's actually very common in China. Most factories, even tiny ones, provide their employees with housings as a holdover from cadre days. Moreover, it's generally beneficial to the owner, who feel they get some control over their workers via things like curfew, and may make money off of them, like buying at the company's store, which is a shitty practice, but alright. While Hubei is beautiful, lots of sweeping farmland framed by mountains, a ton of fresh waterways, and it really is a gorgeous place with some of the best food in China, it also now holds 6 out of the 10 most polluted cities in China due to its position along highways and riverways. Hubei has a lot of factory towns known for niche work, and that niche work has led to a lot of small operations and suppliers. Factory owners may then also want to provide housing for another reason, that their workers are illegal migrant hands. Yikes, who would want to move to China? In China, you need a hukao, or residency card, to do everything from buying train tickets to renting apartments to registering for school. If you want a job in Beijing, say, but your hukao lists your home as in Wuhan, you have to get that hukao changed, very challenging and expensive, in order to legally work and have access to these services. No hukao, no legal standing. As changing hukaos is next to impossible, most of China's massive labor force works illegally. That means they have no legal standing and are often completely at the mercy of their bosses for everything from housing to assurances that yes, they will eventually be paid. It's heartbreaking and downright torturous, in the words of the author. I'll go ahead and say it now. China's a shithole! At least America has better workers' rights. Suck it, China. Now, of course, the author of this article recommends reading I Am Fan Yusu. There's a link right here that I may or may not put in the description. Read it if you feel like being super depressed. Joke's on the author. I haven't felt emotion in years. Please help me. Now, of course, you, after all of this, bouncing back into the crime part of all this article, immediately goes to the police, who determined that everyone was killed sometime after 8 p.m. on December 26th. And sometime before 8 a.m. December 27th. Very specific, I know, right? Those in the dormitory had untouched bedding, suggesting that they had all been killed prior to going to bed that night. Moreover, the worker found in the ditch was still wearing his work clothes. Police determined early on that Yu only survived because, as locals, they had other housing to stay in, and cleared them pretty quickly. All 8 victims were killed by knives and stabbings. So I was mistaken when I said 6 factory workers and 1 child, 7 factory workers and 1 child. Okay, I'm gonna pause to blow my nose. I'm suffering. Linthari, edit this all out. Oh my god, pause button. Okay, I'm back, and I'm gonna get back to speaking in the sentence, and then you resume the... You know how to edit, Linthari. I don't need to explain this to you. You get what I'm trying to tell you. All 8 victims were killed by knives. And you know how knives kill people? Stabbing and cutting. And it was assumed that whoever committed the crime was very familiar with the layout of the plant/routines of the workers. Further forensic analysis, and the author is impressed by this because China went from 0 to fucking 60 with the crime analysis in like 5 years, and the author's 100% here for it. Good for you, buddy. Suggested that the attacker wore a pair of European Union or European size 40, size 8 men's and American. European shoe sizes are so much better. Leather shoes, and stood at about 170 centimeters tall, roughly 5'5" in freedom units. Ha! Short! Since the same weapon was used for all the slayings, police also determined the killer worked alone, which is horrifying. No one heard anything, as the factory next door, a cement factory, is, loud as hell. Despite a long investigation, no leads turned up. Police did discover that the Wangs had reported a robbery at their house about a month and a half prior to attack, and about 15,000 yuan was taken, over 2K in US dollars, both then and now. Moreover, factory workers had complained of their items being taken or moved in the weeks leading up to the attack. This all led to police making the determination that the killer was likely someone who had worked at the factory previously. Still with no leads in 2008, they offered a 50,000 yuan, over 7K US dollars, reward for anyone who provides clues or tips that leads to the killer's arrest. As of today, no substantial leads have been reported, and the question remains not just who did it, but why. As far as police found, nothing was missing from the factory. Why kill the Wangs and also all of their employees? Could someone have targeted a factory worker and everyone else was collateral damage? The entire Wang clan perished in the killings, and no one benefited from their deaths directly. It's unclear if there were others that may have financially gained from the killings, and if not for money, why? Knife attacks are much more personal than shootings, but firearms are hard to come by in China. Heibai's other most famous crime was a murder of 17 via tractor in 2010. Leading to more personal attacks, were knives to the face, neck personal, or was it just convenient? So I'm gonna go ahead, slap my cock on the table, put the glizzy on him, and tell y'all what happened as I see it. So it's pretty clear that the workforce situation is bad in China. Really bad. That sounds like slavery bad. I guess at least you get paid. Kinda. So, with the fact that most of China's massive workforce is, illegal, it's entirely possible that the Wang family was like, come work for us, bitch. And then someone was like, yeah, I need a job. This sounds like a great deal. And then they got fucked over, so they came back, killed the Wangs, and everyone else was collateral damage. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's what happened, and if that's the case, the Wangs probably had it coming. So, yeah, good job. Good job me, that is. I'm the world's best detective now. Morgan County 3. Throughout the 1960s, the Morgan County area of northern Alabama grew pretty significantly, which is surprising because the general consensus of the South is run, flee, get out of there while you can. But anyway, the Morgan County area of northern Alabama had grown significantly. The area was receiving an influx of families due to the emerging market of Huntsville, as well as a U.S. missile command established at Redstone Arsenal. On May 6, 1967, a rainy Saturday in Decatur, Alabama, a woman named Mary Faye Hunter left her family's home on the 800th block of 8th Avenue, SE. She headed towards a House of Beauty, where she had an appointment to get her hair styled. She left the salon at around 11:30. and went up a block to the nearby A&P grocery store where she was last seen by witnesses, leaving a little before noon. She never returned home, and her family reported her missing at around 1 p.m. that afternoon. 5 months later, on October 14th, 1967, the skeletal remains of a young woman were found in an offshoot of the Tennessee River, referred to as Flint Creek in one newspaper report, and Wheeler Lake in another. Police were able to confirm the identity of the remains as Mary Faye Hunter, but made a confounding statement when they announced that they believed the bodies showed signs of sexual assault. Other authorities were curious how they came to a conclusion like this because, they're skeletal remains, but it has never been revealed how they determined any sexual assault took place. The case then went cold, and state investigator Bob Hancock later told reporters, "We just had nothing to go on in that case." No leads or significant persons of interest developed. Mary Faye had no real romantic history. Damn, imagine getting fucking murdered and the cops were like, "Yeah, it couldn't have been a lover. You were a single bitch." That's rough. Now, rumors have persisted that she had some kind of mental disability, which is why she was still living at home at 34 years old. She worked as a secretary at Redstone Arsenal, but nobody noted anything out of the ordinary for Miss Faye. Over 2 years later, another woman would fall prey to a violent crime. Juanita Acker, formerly Juanita Holland, was 40 years old, with 3 children, William, Susan, and Kathy. In 1966, her husband, Cal, had succumbed to cancer, making Juanita a young widow. In April of 1969, the Acker family home had burnt down, meaning that Juanita, her 2 daughters, and her son needed to move into a motel room in Decatur, Alabama, off of U.S. Highway 31. I actually lied to you about her son. Her son, William, moved in with friends, so it's just Juanita and her 2 daughters. On May 23rd, her 12-year-old daughter Kathy was staying the night at his friend's house, and her 16-year-old daughter Susan was out on a date with her 21-year-old fiancé, Nathan Harton. That's a little strange. Not gonna knock anything, except for the part where I do. 5-year age gap between 16 and 21, little bit fucking weird. Like, 30 to 35, not weird. Equal life experience. 21 to 16, little bit fucky-wucky. What you trying to get there, Nathan Harton? That's a little, makes me a little uncomfortable. It's kind of fucking creepy. Mostly because of difference in life experience. The difference between a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old mentally is fucking massive. Between a 21-year-old and a 26-year-old, not so massive, but still kind of there. Between a 26-year-old and a 31-year-old, not really. Age gaps matter less the older you get because you eventually start to approach rapidly the become a skeleton phase of life. So it really doesn't matter much, but when you're still young, it's kind of, creepy. Anyway, rumors allege that a family friend visited Juanita alone at around 10 p.m., but the author of this article, who is Darth Stupidius, thank you very much for that. Oh shit, I lost where it was in the article. Darth Stupidius found only one newspaper clipping that validated that. A motel employee clocked into his overnight shift at around 11 p.m. and made a mental note that the phone line from Juanita's room was connected for approximately 7 minutes, meaning there was activity in her room until at least 11:05 p.m. or so. A little after 1 a.m., Juanita's 16-year-old daughter Susan and her fiancé Nathan returned to the motel room. At 1 a.m., what kind of unchristian things were you guys doing? Nathan, you 21-year-old son of a bitch, do we need a file for statutory rape? Anyway, the door key, which Juanita usually kept beneath the doormat in case her daughters needed to get in, was not underneath the doormat. As a matter of fact, it was on top of the mat. When Susan and Nathan entered the room, they found Juanita lying in a blood-soaked bed. She'd been shot twice in the face at point-blank range with a .22 caliber pistol. The Morgan County Sheriff, David Sandlin, said, "I think somebody slipped in while she was sleeping and shot her." No fucking shit! I wonder what else could have happened. Wow, thank you, Captain Obvious. Based on the evidence and test results they could gather, toxicologists determined that Juanita had died at approximately 11:30 p.m., but other than that, there was nothing for them to run with. The only person who provided a definitive statement was a motel employee who saw the phone line being used by Juanita at 11 p.m., but no other motel guests saw or heard anything suspicious. Investigators noted that Juanita was set to remarry later that year to a man named Bill Givens. That's a shitty name. I feel bad for you, buddy. Your parents didn't like you too much. Now, Mr. Givens was from Chicago, so the author of this article can only assume that they spoke to him, but there's really not anything about it. Interesting to note is that Juanita also worked at Redstone Arsenal, same as Mary Faye Hunter, albeit in a different program. Acker was an employee for the Safeguard program, while Hunter was a secretary for the Marshall Space Flight Center. Regardless, that's still something to note. The investigation, again, went nowhere, with police never developing any serious leads or filing any charges. However, many years later, Bob Hancock, the same flapjawed guy that we heard at the end of the last one, the state investigator who handled the case of Mary Faye Hunter and assisted in Acker's murder, stated that he had always suspected a co-worker of Acker's for some involvement. This co-worker had been questioned and interrogated by investigators, but after passing a polygraph seemed to be clear. God damn it, you idiot! No! No! I'm shaking and crying right now. I can't believe this. For the uninitiated, a polygraph is equivalent to throwing wet toilet paper at a wall and claiming that you are an incredibly talented artist. You can put a polygraph on a fucking plant, and you will still get little wave doodads. That's because it's impossible to tell if someone's actually lying. What a polygraph determines is whether or not someone is anxious. Now, you might be surprised to hear this, but obviously, most fucking people are gonna be anxious when questioned for murder. So, thus forth, we can position and prove that polygraphs are wildly inaccurate, because saying, yeah, this guy was anxious while we were accusing him of murder, so clearly he's the murderer, is a dumb-ass take. You know who's not gonna be anxious when you question them about murder? A serial killer! Anyway, allow me to recompose myself. Oh, Bob Hancock, I'll never fucking forgive you. Okay, that rage is done. Now, details of this co-worker have never been released for obvious reason, but Hancock always suspected him. Hancock, shut the fuck up. Stop talking. Thank you. Joyce Drake, born Thelma Joyce Sanders, was a young mother of two who spent her days as a housewife. However, when she wasn't at home taking care of her kids, she was helping out with her parents' shop, R.L. Sanders grocery store located in Eva, Alabama. Joyce was helping out with her parents' shop on Wednesday, January 7th, 1970. She volunteered to cash some checks for her parents. Taking the checks, she hopped into her pickup truck and headed to the nearby bank. By all indications, Joyce was alone during this travel. She went into the bank, cashed the checks, getting $400 in cash, and headed out to her truck with the money bag clutched under her arm. As she left the bank, though, at least 3 separate witnesses recall seeing a large red-haired man with Joyce inside her truck. One newspaper referred to this man as being big-built, so he's a large lad. But the statements by numerous witnesses recalled this as being odd, as they were all familiar with one another, but didn't recognize this as being Joyce's husband, Randy, who, it's worth pointing out, clearly didn't have red hair. Ooh, you fucking somebody else in your truck, Joyce? Come on, car sex is uncomfortable. Joyce failed to return to her parents' store with the money. Likewise, she didn't return home to her husband or her 2 children, 2-year-old Stephen or 9-month-old Randy Jr. Oh, Randy. Imagine being named Randy. Imagine having the name Randy and thinking, yeah, this is acceptable to pass on to my son. Jesus Christ. That's how I know you guys were eating leads in the fucking 50s. Anyway, the townsfolk and police began looking for Joyce throughout the area. They found her truck later that afternoon, just after the winter sun had set, along Union Hill Church Road. There was no trace of Joyce, the money, or that red-headed dude. Later that evening, just after 9 p.m., a search party of 3 men, including a local city councilor, stumbled upon the remains of Joyce Drake in a nearby area named Odin's Ridge. I think I have dyslexia. Anyway, her body had been left on top of a small trash pile, and several newspapers referred to her body as mutilated. Oh, I don't know, a corpse left on a trash pile ought to be in pristine condition, newspapers. If you take Morgan County Coroner John McBride at his word, he described the scene as being one of the most brutal murders in Morgan County history. Joyce's neck had been slashed at least 4 times, and McBride described the person behind this heinous crime as a vicious mad killer. Some reports indicated that Joyce's hands were found clutching little red hairs, and that there was apparent skin marks underneath her fingernails, but the author of this article could find no further validation of this. More on that in a bit. Police stated that there was no sexual motive to this crime. Why are you scrolling like that? Why did you scroll like that, computer? Oh my god. Pro tip, don't accidentally hit the down arrow. Now I don't remember where I was. Here we are. Police stated that there was no sexual motive to this crime, claiming that the only motive was robbery. They later found the money bag Joyce had been carrying, and it was empty, save for a empty leftover handwritten cash check, which had not been cashed, and a single penny. What a gentleman. Fucking kills her and then leaves her a penny. Reports from over the years seem to indicate that police had a good idea of who the killer was, but either lost focus or didn't have enough evidence. If only they had this neat little thing called DNA. Morgan County Sheriff Van Ward stated about the person of interest, "I believe he's still in the area." Authorities, as well as reporters, made multiple mentions of the suspect being known to the Drake and Sanders family, but didn't offer up any more details. In March, it was reported that a Morgan County grand jury was nearing a decision to indict the suspect for the crimes. He'd apparently been brought in on a misdemeanor, but jumped bond and ran across state lines, eventually ending up in a northeastern state. He was returned to a Madison County jail in Huntsville pending the decision of the grand jury. No indictment was handed down, and police eventually knocked this person of interest off their radar. A year later, nearby Coleman Times paper gave a front-page headline to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of Joyce's murder. In this article, her father, R.L. Sanders, stated he believed the person responsible lived in the area and had visited the shop. I think Joyce knew the person who killed her. I also believe he's still living in the area. Well, statistically, Mr. Sanders, you're correct. But are they going to solve this crime? No. Now, he went on to continue and say, "I believe this because shortly after the murder, I found a blood-stained dollar bill in my cash register, which someone had used to buy something. Also, a bill was found at Hartzell Supermarket and another in Falkville." Joyce's murder remains unsolved, but in 2009 it received a push from a local news station. In return, Morgan County announced a $25,000 reward for information leading to the closing off of the case. So this leads us to the ultimate question: are these 3 murders linked? Yeah? Not necessarily. The author of this article goes on to state that they believe these 3 women fell prey to violent killers, but not necessarily the same one. Mary Faye Hunter's cause and manner of death could never be determined. No motive could be guessed at. Juanita Acker was shot in the head twice with a .22. No motive could be determined. Joyce Drake was stabbed. So this doesn't exactly line up. Not to mention, even though no motive was guessed at in Miss Hunter's case, it was guessed at that she was raped. Yeah, nice. Juanita Acker, well, no motive. And Joyce Drake, motive was robbery. So 3 women, 3 deaths, 2 different causes, and, well, probably 3 different causes. We couldn't really tell with Mary Faye Hunter's, and only 1 motive. However, the reason that these 3 women are linked is that in the years since our investigations were started, their case files have now gone missing. Huh. I wonder what that could... When cases got a new push in 2011, Morgan County Chief Deputy Mike Corley could not say when the case files had gone missing, or the reason why. Oh, I know why. It was the fucking cops. Throughout the investigation, state investigators were assisting county officials who in turn were being aided by local detectives. The case files seem to have gone missing somewhere in between, and nobody has found them in the decades since. I wonder why they went missing. I wonder who could possibly have any kind of interest in making these files suddenly disappear. Oh boy, do I wonder. Unfortunately, all of the original investigators and detectives have passed away, RIP, and none of the families have wanted to be involved in any media efforts to highlight the cases, so both have been proven to be a dead end. So what does that mean? That means there ain't shit! We ain't found shit! And we probably won't. So, there is, of course, some other resources at the end of this article that I'm not gonna link in the description. Won't be in the description. Next two are a double whammy that I'm just gonna slap out of the way immediately because, I can't find them. The Baltimore City and Howard County rapist. There is nothing about this. I mean, there's a shit ton of rapists in Baltimore City and Howard County, so, I don't... They really should have specified. And we've got the Larimer County shootings. There's a lot of police shooting incidents in Larimer County. Wow, I know how to... I'm having a stroke. Anyway... And there's also a lot of weird things about, like, cowboy horse riding shooting. Cowboy mounted shooting, right there. Yep, there it is. So, also one of those ones, not specific enough. I can't really find it, so we're just gonna have to live with never knowing, because some things you never know, and sometimes that's for the best. DC area hotel rapist. You're never going to believe what this guy is known for, what he does, what he did. He is a rapist in the DC area who targets hotel cleaning workers. Now, I could give you the bread and butter of this case, which is a lot of rape. You know, really fun stuff. Things everyone likes. Yeah. Now, of course, this guy was stupid, and he left DNA all over his crime scenes in the form of, cum and other stuff, but cum mostly, which is terrible, really bad. But they finally indicted him on DNA, but funnily enough, they can't find him. They don't know who or what he is besides a rapist. Now, of course, here's a composite, which, if you can get a comparison of the little face on the side of this level, that punchable face is this scumbag. Now, of course, 2 of the 6 known assaults in this crime spree took place in 2003, one involving a 29-year-old female housekeeper and the other involving a 22-year-old female housekeeper. These were, of course, the Jefferson Hotel in Northwest Washington, D.C., and at the Marriott Courtyard Hotel in Greenbelt, Maryland, because even though this is the D.C. area, it also means the Greater Virginia, Maryland area, too. Either way, Washington, D.C. is the most wretched hive of scum and villainy one could ever find. But yeah, there was, of course, in May 2003, I just had a minor stroke there, where a 68-year-old woman was raped, which is appalling on so many levels. If a 68-year-old woman is not safe, no one in that town is. So, pro tip, are you in Washington, D.C.? Run. Oh boy. Our first school shooting. Now this one doesn't really have, like a Wikipedia or an Unresolved Mysteries page. So we get ABC 30 Action News. Weather alert. High wind warning. Now, in case you can't feel the syphilis and ads just emanating from this page violently, This is gonna be a great one. And I've read this before, but the original take was lost because some fucking jackass forgot to turn on his mic. Let's just say this article focuses weirdly on someone who lives by the school. And though Miss Ramos's additions to the articles about her mother's heart are very, very heartwarming, let's just get into the case facts. At around 11:15 on Tuesday night, Tuesday being Wednesday, 6th May 2020, so this is Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. Police responded to reports of shots fired at the school parking lot. There they found 3 men dead of gunshot wounds. 19-year-olds Jose Pina and Blake Medeiros, and 18-year-old Isaiah Rule. I don't really understand why they're using men here. These are clearly just kids who probably did something stupid and did not deserve to get shot. Yikes, that's sad. It's heartbreaking. Police believe the victims came to the parking lot in the same car, but it's unclear what led up to the shooting. It's too early to speculate any type of motive, Sergeant Celeste Sanchez said, and the detectives are aggressively working this case, looking at every angle possible. Police say the young men are not current students of the Vessela Unified School District, which is a district that this happened in. By Wednesday morning, there was a small memorial at the scene consisting of candles, balloons, and flowers. At the time, police have made no arrests. Thank you, lingerie ad, as I'm trying to make a YouTube video. Thank you so fucking much. You know what I really wanted to see as I'm reading about a fatal shooting of 3 teenage boys who died far too young? I want to see someone's fucking half-naked body. Thank you so much, Venus Fashion. I really appreciate that. Next. Durham family killings. Now, this one ought to also be fun because it's one of those ones so obscure that, I only have the WatugaDemocrat.com. Isn't that interesting? Now, this slaying happened, or at least this article was written January 31st, 2015, so pretty recent and definitely not 8 years ago. Time certainly isn't marching on at the same pace it always does, threatening to leave us all dead and behind, something that certainly will at one point happen because you are not immortal. Anyway, let's get to reading this article. Murders aren't supposed to happen in small towns such as Boone. Oh, so many fucking murders happen in small towns. Don't even try that shit, Watuga Democrat. The difference is that cops don't really, give a shit to investigate out there. But 42 years ago this Tuesday, the community was shaken by a triple homicide that left people wondering for years if a killer was lurking among them. Chances are you've met a killer in your life. Very high chance. I think something like 1 in 20. Hey, Linthari, can you confirm whether or not I'm just simply a bozo who does not know his statistics, or if I'm correct here? Go ahead and put the chances of actually knowing a murderer on screen now.
Hello everyone, Linthari here, and I decided to Google what are the chances you've met a murderer, and apparently there are several different answers. Right here it says about 1 in every 750 people, but that's from Quora.com, and we all know how reliable that information is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check previous videos on Quora. Then we've got BuzzFeed, which apparently, according to them, the average person walks past at least 16 murderers in their lifetime. So if you want to check that out, there's the math for it. Yeah, I don't do well with math. But you also have to keep in mind, this was posted in 2017. And considering how crazy things have been lately, it's probably more by now. Anyway, here's another site that I ended up finding called Thought Catalog. And they say you will walk past 36 murderers in your lifetime. But yeah, there's also some other random things in here that are interesting. You can pause at any time if you want to read those. Then there's this website called casinos.org. And this one says the odds of meeting a doppelganger are 1 in 1 trillion. And we're talking exact doppelganger. Then murderer is 1 in 750. Your soulmate, 1 in 10,000. I just thought this was rather interesting considering, the title of this Iceberg to begin with. What are the odds of being a serial killer's victim? According to this website, let me actually find it. Blah, 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 blah. The odds... Oh, right here. You've got a 0.00039% chance of being a serial killer's victim. So, I found that interesting. In any case, let's get back into the rest of the true crime iceberg and get this shit over with.
Thanks. During the early stages of a fierce snowstorm on the evening of February 3rd, 1972, a mother, father, and their teenage son were brutally and systematically murdered in their home on Clyde Townsend Road on the west side of town, just off the NC 105 bypass. Bryce Durham, 51, his wife Virginia Durham, 46, and their son Bobby Joe Durham, 19, were found with their heads draped onto a bathtub full of water in their home. Medical examinations later determined the presence of rope burns around each victim's neck. An autopsy revealed that Virginia had died of strangulation and that her husband and son were also strangled before being drowned in the running water of the tub. Investigators were immediately perplexed by the motive of killings. I don't understand why it stumps investigators to this point that, sometimes people are just sick. Sometimes people aren't human, they're just monsters, and sometimes monsters want to do what monsters do. There isn't a reason. Fucked up things happen to good people for no good cause. Now, earlier published media reports stated the possibility of robbery as a motive, but bank deposit money was found lying on the floor. So it's not a robbery gone bad, and to this day the case remains unsolved. The murder case, of course, has never been forgotten by Watauga County Sheriff Len Hageman, probably because Watauga County is a place so small that things that happened centuries ago are still remembered. In 2006, actually, Linthari, before I carry on, go ahead and put on screen where Watauga County is. Thanks. In 2006, several investigators from various agencies convened to review old crime scene photographs, and case files were reviewed with notations, and an open discussion followed. New ideas and strategies were then formulated. There have, from day one, been persons of interest, but as in any homicide, developing persons of interest into suspects is often easier said than done, Hageman was quoted as saying. He went on to say, I can say that we continue to have leads and are actively looking at following up on these leads. I can also say that many of these leads occurred within the past 2 years. Former Sheriff Ward Carroll held jurisdiction of the case along with lead SBI agent Charlie Whitman, but the green light was given for both Sheriff's Office and Boone Police Department to work the case, Hageman said. Whitman was unavailable for comment to this story. Personally, Hageman said he's been working with the case since 1975 with the BPD. New and emerging technologies were used, too, on the aging case with few results. We discussed with the SBI lab the potential of DNA with a specific piece of physical evidence. It It was determined that the piece of evidence had been exposed to elements that made DNA analysis very difficult. It should be noted that every year since the homicide that all fingerprints have been resubmitted for comparison. Today there are latent prints that have yet to be identified. The investigation is still active and ongoing, Hagman said. Now, of course, it does go on to talk about a new home, but, I think we have everything that we need to know here. We could really go up for, shocked community. I don't know, should I? Why the hell not? Natives of Wilkes County and the Durham family came to Boone from Mount Airy in November 1969. 69. After purchasing the local Buick dealership. He kinda showed up here, said former trial judge Phil Ginn of Bryce, Durham. No one knew much about him. Ginn was a close friend of the couple's son, Bobby Joe Durham, who he was supposed to meet in an Appalachian State University basketball game the night of the slayings. Although friendly, the family mostly kept to themselves. It wasn't like he gratiated himself to the community, Ginn said of Bryce Durham. I don't mean it in a negative way, but when someone buys a business, they really get involved in the community. They, being the family, were a bit more reserved. In my personal opinion, the Durhams had not been in Watauga County for a long period of time to establish a larger network of folks who really knew them as neighbors and as business contacts, Hageman said. It's unclear if the family had any prior business dealings in the high country, but it was confirmed that Bryce Durham had graduated with a degree in physical education from ASU in 1941. Jesus Christ, 1941. Friends of the family and state investigators don't believe he was involved in any shady or drug-related activity, and their values were reflected in their son. Bobby was a pretty quiet guy, Ginn said. He didn't talk as much as some people do. He was a good-hearted fellow and a straight-up kind of guy. While the investigators, amateur sleuths, and other residents might disagree on the motive of the crimes, little has changed on the essentials of the case, which is, exactly how cold cases tend to go. Now, of course, a TV was still on when investigators arrived on the scene, and 3 glasses of soft drink along with some food were discovered nearby. On the kitchen table was a partially eaten baked chicken. The family was likely enjoying a snack and a primetime movie or television show when they were surprised. Officers were told that a green and white 4-wheeled GMC Jimmy was seen leaving the residence shortly after, 10:30 p.m. 2 hours later, the North Carolina Highway Patrol found the vehicle matching the description abandoned, but still running with the windshield wipers still in use a short distance away on Poplar Grove Road. Authorities say the vehicle came from Bryce Durham's car dealership. He had reportedly decided to take it to the family home from the car lot in the rugged vehicle due to the severity of the approaching storm. Now, of course, more valuable items were left behind in the house, but for whatever reason, silverware was found inside the still-running vehicle. Now, these are all weird details of the case, and I have suddenly lost motivation to keep reading this article, so thank you very much for the free script, WataugaDemocrat.com. Big Preach. Who wrote this article? Jesse Campbell. Jesse Campbell, thank you for being much smarter than some of the other people who write articles regarding true crime cases. Next. Florence County triple murders. How many times is it that something by the name of Florence has come up on this godforsaken iceberg? It's a lot. Florence is a cursed name. Any place named Florence is a cursed place. Italy? Wrong. No Italy. Florence, Italy needs to be wiped off the map, and I will personally do so. Well, let's get into the details of this case. The murders of John Timmons, 56, Tion Gore, 37, and Shannon Gainey, 25, on Cromer Lane in Florence County on August 16, 2010, still remain unsolved. Florence County deputies were called to the home on Cromer Lane at around 5 p.m. that evening after neighbors found 2 bodies in the front of the home. As deputies were examining the scene, investigators found a 3rd body in the back area of the house. All of the victims suffered from multiple gunshot wounds. Now, Timmons lived at the home but never released his relationships with Gore or Gainey. We're trying to figure out who was a primary target. Was everybody target? Was Tion, or Shannon, or Mr. Timmons? So, having 3 suspects, we need to find out the motive. 3 suspects? Do you mean victims? I think they mean victims. McFadden said that they had some persons of interest, but it hasn't led to any arrests. We did have some leads and follow up with some suspects, but we need just a little more to try and tie up some loose ends, explained McFadden. I wonder how many McFat jokes he had to put up with in middle school. Or they. Her. Z? I don't know what this person is. It's a him. He added that this is a difficult investigation because there's no witness to the crime. McFadden said, 3 different victims, in some cases you have witnesses or you have nothing. This time in the case, it was tragic because whoever came in, they killed everyone in the house. So we got 3 families hurting and 3 families want answers. Well, spoiler alert, there really hasn't been answers. It's been 12 years. It's not looking good for them. McFadden said he's convinced there's someone who holds the information that can solve the case. Oh yeah, definitely. Will you be able to find them? No. We're hoping that there was somebody that had additional information who, at the time, thinking we had information. What? We hoping? We hoping? What? We're hoping. Thank you for the brilliant writing, ABC 15 News. Jesus. We're hoping that someone will come with some information. Come forward and help us. Give closure to the family and get an arrest in this case, McFadden said. Yeah, I don't think that's likely. Okay, and hey, look at that. There's no lingerie ads. Thank you. Golf and Stuff Murders. Oh boy, this one ought to be fun. Thanks to user Lamau from 5 years ago on r/unresolved mysteries. This is their article. 3 teens slashed to death near Golf and Stuff serial... Killer not found after more than 33 years. Wow, talk about the rule of 3s. 3 teens, 33 years, 3 uses of 3s, and until I used this description to ruin it, 3 descriptions. Now, let's get into the article. Hey guys, this is my first post here. I've been a long-time lurker, but I want to put up a case that was around where my grandparents used to live in. I apologize if the post isn't high quality or well written. I'm currently writing this on mobile. Okay, I didn't really need to read that. Anyway, on April 13th, 1984... Literally 1984! God, it's been so long since I've been able to make that joke. 1984! The caster's father dropped the 3 children off that night at the Golf and Stuff in Norwalk, border of Downey and LA County, with strict orders to be picked up at a prearranged time. Eddie Castor, Rachel Castor, and Veronica Flores, a fellow friend of them, were all prepared for a night of fun. Golf? Fun? Ha! What are you, rich old white men? Unfortunately, they were later found dead at around 10 p.m. Eddie was found with a slashed throat on the sidewalk. It was shown that he crawled over to the riverbank and passed out on the river bed. Both Veronica and Rachel were both found at the riverbank of the San Gabriel River, which is right behind the Golf and Stuff. Veronica had a stab in the back and Rachel had multiple slashes over her body. Veronica was 4.5 months pregnant, had a learning disability, and was about to get married to her boyfriend and move to a nearby apartment. After being annoyed by dealing with the group of students seeming intent on making her miserable, she transferred from Southgate High School to Odyssey. She was about to get married to her boyfriend and move into... You already specified this, author, but thank you. Addie and Rachel were the 4th and 5th children of the family. They were very bright and well-loved by friends of the community, and now they're very dead. Detectives looked into the case and were amazed. Many theories were floating around, including one that believed that a cult killed them since it was Friday the 13th, and pentagrams were painted, and frogs were impaled on a fence nearby. It's unknown exactly why they were targeted for the murder, and many people believe that the trio was killed due to bullying, since Veronica was harassed many times during her school time. However, the river area is a relatively free crime zone. or at least it was. Richard Ramirez was known to be around this time frame? What? Yeah, Richard Ramirez was known to be around this time frame. He attacked or killed 25 people from March to August. And in 2009, detectives linked Ramirez to the killing of Mei Lung in San Francisco on April 10th, 1984. Literally 1984! Which was exactly 3 days before the Kaiser Flores killings. Castor, not Kaiser. We're not talking about Kaiser Franz, otherwise known as Satan. Now, of course, Ramirez was known to travel all over the state of California looking for people to kill. Veronica's family wondered if it was Richard Ramirez who killed him. Detectives never really thought of the idea, but they have never carefully checked to see if Ramirez was involved. Detectives took another look at the case in 2009. They collected DNA from evidence, which they believed belonged to someone other than the 3 teenagers. They ran the DNA through a database of criminals, but got no matches, meaning the samples were effectively useless. So, that ought to be interesting stuff. That's tragic. Golf and stuff. Is that like a mini golf chain? Valentine's Day triple murder. Another triple murder. That's great. Also, we're on Fox 21 News right now. Fuck you, Fox. I hate Fox so much. Now, let's read about Colorado Springs, Colorado. She was a young lady looking for love, but instead she met a brutal end along with her 2 young children. The fuck are you trying to go for here, man? This isn't a novel synopsis. You don't need to fucking hook me into the article. It was extremely traumatic for the city. Okay, just tell me about the case, god damn! Actually, I'm gonna pause and find a better article, because I am not gonna be able to tolerate this, and it's Fox. We hate Fox. We absolutely hate Fox. Fox, bad. Very bad.
A few moments later.
There we go. Alright, Linthari, put me back in.
I gotcha.
Now we're on The Gazette, who won a Pulitzer Prize in... Yeah, they won a Pulitzer Prize, that's all you need to know. And it's not Fox. Every Valentine's Day, Juliet Rundle tries to put on a happy face. The West Virginia woman doesn't want... Hey, wait a minute, this isn't Colorado! I'm not a subscriber! Okay, so I guess there is a lot of triple Valentine's Day killings. What? That's interesting. So there is the triple homicide of Cassandra Rundle and her 2 children on February 14th, 1985. Let's go ahead and... Hello, Google. Hello, Google. Hello, Google. Not a Hitachi ad. I don't want a vibrator. Alright, back to Fox. Let's go ahead and see what this other one is. Okay, nope. This is also Cassandra Rundle and her 2... God damn it! Lingerie! Why?
We are experiencing some technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Alright, so I just double-checked with Fox, which you saw, so never mind. Yep, it's the same person. Please, please, what is going on? Stop! I'm just trying to read! Okay, we're back. We're back. The truth is that Valentine's Day haunts her. February 14th, 1985, 1 year away from The Funny, TM, marks a day her 37-year-old stepdaughter, Cassandra Rundle, and Cassandra's 2 young children were found brutally killed in their Ivywild home. The triple slaying is one of the more horrific crimes in Colorado Springs history, and no one was ever arrested. I have nightmares about that day every year, Juliet Rundle said. Now, after 27 years, a number of people with direct knowledge of the case is dwindling. Well, yeah, when your first search result is a Fox article, you can't really expect people with knowledge to be reading about it. Cassandra Rundle's mother, father, and sister have all died. So has Lou Smith, one of the detectives who revisited the case years after the killings. There aren't a whole lot of us left, said retired Colorado Springs Police Sergeant Dick Reisler. Dick. Who is the lead detective for the case. Juliet Rundle said she makes sure to keep her phone number listed so people can call her with information about the case, and holds out hope that One day there will be justice. That day in 1985, Cassandra Rundle's ex-husband visited the home on Laclede Avenue to bring her a record album as a Valentine's Day gift. Instead, he found the bodies of Rundle and her 12-year-old and 10-year-old children, Detrick Sturm and Melanie Sturm. According to Gazette articles from the time, the killer first attacked Cassandra Rundle between 5 and 8 a.m. that day by beating her with a hockey stick. Jesus Christ, hockey players they've gone too far with this. He tied her up with her own clothes, raped her, and then strangled her to death. Next, he went to Melanie's room, where the evidence showed she tried to fight off the attacker. She was beaten so badly, her skull was fractured, and she too was raped and strangled. Police believe Detrick walked in on the killings that day, and he too was beaten. Police found him face down on his bedroom floor, a bloodied hockey stick nearby. John Holliday, an investigator for the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office at the time, said the crime immediately became a top priority for his office and for police. He spent that day outside the Rundle house interviewing neighbors. To this day, I'm glad I didn't go in, he said. I don't want that picture in my mind. This guy would have never fucking survived the internet. Reisler said the slayings of a mother and her 2 children tugged at the heartstrings of investigators, which is understandable. Rundle was described by her stepmother as a kind and caring woman who loved poetry and loved her children. She had married her childhood sweetheart Steve Sturm, the father of her 2 children, and they later divorced. She also married and divorced tattoo artist Douglas Peltzer, who found her that morning. Her kids, Juliet Rundle said, were kind and smart, both enrolled in gifted programs at their school. Reisler said the police worked meticulously to preserve evidence and even called in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for help. We locked that house up for more than a month, he said. The problem wasn't finding a suspect, he said it was narrowing down a long list of suspects. Before she died, Rundle took out 2 personal ads in the Colorado Springs Sun that has since gone out of business. In those ads, she described herself as a free spirit, independent, and a modest lady. Why would you advertise yourself in a newspaper? Police said at the time she's had more than 80 responses and had replied to several of the men. I see why now. The problem with this case is that there's a multiple number of suspects. Some are known, some are not known. That's why it's an unsolved case today. We have a pool of suspects, but we can't eliminate them all, and some we don't even know who they are yet. A grand jury was called to help investigate the crime and decide if there was enough evidence to charge someone. No charges were filed, and Reisler said if there is a person I'm having a stroke as I'm reading this. Reisler said there is a person he strongly suspects, but there isn't enough evidence to convict. He would not name the person. Smart move. If I were on the jury with the suspect in my mind, I wouldn't convict him either, Reisler said, and I know more than the jury will ever know. Okay. He hopes the evidence he helped collect, aided by advances in technology, will someday lead to the killer. Keep dreaming, buddy. The case haunts John Holliday, who is on a team of investigators including Smith, who were called in a few years after the killings to give the case a new set of eyes. It wasn't just a homicide, Holliday said. It was all kinds of heinous crimes that went with it. Yeah. His team was unable to find enough evidence to charge anyone, and since the police have continued to investigate... Yeah, I was definitely going somewhere with that sentence. DNA collected has been submitted to the National Database in hopes of finding a match, and Juliet Rundle has faith police are doing all they can. That's misplaced faith. And confidence that someday the family will have its answers. I kind of feel bad for dunking on this old lady so hard, so I'm just not going to. You keep hoping, Juliet Rundle. Police, too, had that confidence for 30 seconds at the start of the case. John Kenda, now a retired Colorado Springs police lieutenant, was quoted in a Gazette story 2 days after the slaying, saying, "I believe this case will be relatively solved relatively soon." Yeah. Great job, Joe Kenda. You really proved to us how fast it was going to be solved. Okay. Next. The Tardy furniture shooting. Oh boy, this ought to be fun. When Sam Jones arrived at Tardy Furniture that morning, nothing looked out of place. Jones had worked at the store in Winona, Mississippi for 50 years before he'd retired. Yep, I can tell you right now this story's gonna go terribly because it's in the American South. Nothing ever good happens in the American South, and if you live in the American South, I am so sorry for you. Please escape while you still can. Earlier that morning, the owner, Bertha Tardy, had called to ask if he would come in to train 2 new delivery guys, so Jones drove downtown and parked in front of Tardy's about 10 a.m. From the outside, the store looked like it always did. It was the last row in a row of shops along Winoa's historic front street. Tom Hardy had opened the store during World War II, back when Tom Tardy had opened the store during World War II, back when downtown still buzzed with shoppers. Bertha had been his longtime store decorator. In 1985, 1 year away from the funny, Tom Tardy sold the business to Bertha, and in 1994 they married. By then, downtown Winona had declined, and many shops along Front Street were vacant. But not Tardy Furniture. The showroom was still stocked, and looking through its big glass display windows, it was easy for a passerby to imagine how a country home could be spiffed up with a new bedroom or dining set. When Sam Jones opened the door that morning, July 16, 1996, he expected to see Miss Tardy and the new employees, but he didn't see anyone. He walked 20 feet or so into the cluttered showroom, past a cluster of armchairs and floor lamps. Nothing seemed amiss, but then he heard a strange sound. The noise was like someone trying to catch their breath, Jones testified. I walked on a little further, and I saw what it was. It was 16-year-old Derek Bobo Stewart, one of the new delivery guys, laying in a pool of blood. Then Jones noticed Robert Golden, 42, against a counter besides Bobo, and Carmen Rigby, 45, face down in front of a plaid sofa. Her car keys were wrapped around her pinky finger. Jones could see that 59-year-old Bertha Tardy was lying near the back office, the soles of her shoes pointing towards them. After I figured I wasn't dreaming, well, I ran to get help for Bobo, Jones would later testify. He hurried to a store up the street and told a woman working there to dial 911. The call came into dispatch at 10:21 a.m. Denise Carver answered it. The woman on the other end of the line didn't exactly know what was going on, but said a man had come to the store to say that several people were lying on the floor at Tardy's. To Carver, it sounded like they'd fainted from the July heat. Yeah. Police Chief Winona Police Chief Johnny Hargrove was patrolling a few short blocks away, and he raced to the Tardy's in less than a minute. Hargrove didn't see Sam Jones, who was still up the street. Entering through the store, he first noticed Bertha Tardy's body. Though she was the farthest from the storefront, she was lying in an aisle that ran the length of the showroom. As he approached her, Hargrove glanced to his right and saw other victims lying near the decorating center, a white counter that sat on an island in the middle of the store. Then he heard Bobo gurgling. Hargrove realized he didn't have his portable radio, so he drew his gun and slowly backed out to the street. At his patrol car, he called for backup, an ambulance, a coroner, and the district attorney. Officer Kenny Townsend arrived soon after. Right away, he saw that Hargrove, an ex-Army sergeant, looked flustered. Hargrove told him to look for the 76-year-old Tom Tardy. Though Tardy had turned over the business to Bertha, he still spent most mornings in the store. Hargrove thought that he might be dead too. "Draw your weapon," Hargrove said. "It's real shit." The officers didn't know if the killer was inside. With gun in hand, Townsend moved quickly through the store. There was no sign of Tom Tardy or anyone else. After that, things happened fast. Paramedics arrived, hoisted Bobo Stewart onto a stretcher, and rushed him to a nearby hospital. Law enforcement taped off the scene to keep the gathering crowd at a distance, but they didn't exactly restrict access. Various officials came and went, including the mayor and even Barney Morgan, the town's animal control officer. "I had a uniform on, I had a badge, so I was allowed to go in," he would later say. Before long, 2 investigators with the State Highway Patrol and 1 from the district attorney's office, the men who would take control of the case, set up a command post at a dining table inside the store. There, they began interviewing witnesses. The most detailed notes of the evidence they collected that day were written by Melissa Schoen and Jody Creel of the Mississippi State Crime Lab. They traveled up to Winona from Jackson, 90 miles away, and arrived at Tardy's Furniture just after 1 p.m. Schoen recovered 2 bullets, 2 bullet fragments, and 1 live round on the floor near a bookcase. She also collected 380 caliber shell casings. 4 people had been shot with only 5 bullets. Each victim had been shot in the head. One of the first pieces of evidence in the case had been spotted by Hargrove, who noticed several faint footprints in the blood near where Bobo's baseball cap was found. In documenting the scene, Schoen sketches the exact pattern of the 3 shoe prints available on the brown-tiled floor. She inspected the shoes of Sam Jones, a man who discovered the body, and drew a picture by the treads, and it was clear that the footprints hadn't been made by him. Creel inventoried the money drawer and the cash register, and no bills, a variety of coins, and several sets of keys. Schoen dusted the counter for fingerprints. In the back office, Schoen noted Bertha Tardy's paperwork was neatly piled. Her pen was off and her purse was sitting on a chair untouched. The door to the floor was safe. Schoen wrote closed but not locked. Contents of the safe are neat and in order. Does not appear to have been gone through. In the afternoon, hundreds of Winona residents gathered on a grassy slope across the street from Tardy Furniture, even as heavy rain began to fall. They prayed and cried and watched as the bodies of Robert Golden, Carmen Rigby, and Bertha Tardy were removed from the scene. Dispatcher Denise Carver went home and threw up. Officer Kenny Townsend filled out an incident report which would later be lost. Great job, police department. Really, just winning. As investigators tried to piece together what happened and who had done it, they had little evidence to go on. Shocking. Though the murders had been committed downtown in broad daylight, conveniently no one had seen or heard a thing, not even the owner of the dry cleaners next door or the mechanics in the body shop behind Tardy's. Fingerprint and DNA analysis wouldn't point to any suspects. Investigators had the shoe prints but no shoes, and bullets but no gun. There was no apparent motive, and the randomness of the crime made it terrifying. Residents worried that a murder was on the loose. Of course there's a murder on the loose. Jesus Christ, 3 people just died. And potentially a 4th, we don't really know. And they wanted the murder caught quickly. State Trooper Tommy Purnell remembered how stressed Chief Hargrove looked. The pressure on him was pretty good, Purnell said. He needed a lead right then to satisfy those people, and he didn't have one. Late in the day, Hargrove issued a statement saying 4 people had been questioned and released by law enforcement, and this would kick off a months-long investigation. Winona Mayor Sonny Simmons told reporters that robbery didn't appear to be a motive because he didn't offer much more than that. Really, we don't have any clue as to what took place or why, Simmons told the Jackson Clarion Ledger. Everyone's pretty well in shock, he said. Things like this don't happen in places like Winona. Oh, yes, they do. Don't even lie about the American South. And that is this entire article. Starting the last segment of this video by listening to a song that I wrote. Well, produced. Made? I don't know. Either way, you can go ahead and press the link in the up there part because I will be reminded of the timestamp and know when to put the link in the up there part. And you can go ahead and enjoy this neat little thing that I made too. Thanks. Back to the Zip Gun Bomber. Starting 1982, an unidentified figure named by the press as Zip Gun Bomber began terrorizing New York City with packages mailed to unsuspecting recipients set to shoot off bullets in 3 different directions. The first victim was 54-year-old high school guidance counselor Joanne Betty Kipp. On May 7, 1982, she was preparing to leave the state with her husband for Mother's Day when she got a cookbook in the mail. She thought it was a Mother's Day gift, however, when she opened it, she was shot by a gun in the booby-trapped cookbook. She was rushed to the local hospital but died hours later. It would be a decade before the killer would strike again. He sent 4 more bombs that were set off between 1993 and 1996. That sucks. You know what is super cool that you could get between 1993 and 1996? A Nissan Skyline GTR. Retired New York City sanitation worker Anthony Lenza and his wife were on vacation in Pennsylvania. On October 15, 1993, their children came to visit and brought their mail. One package had a medallion in it, and when opened, Anthony and 2 of his 5 family members... I don't know where I got 5 from. 2 of his family members were shot. Am I dyslexic? Fortunately, none of them were killed. On April 5th, 1994, 75-year-old Brooklyn resident Alice Caswell was shot and injured by a bomb that was in a medallion box that was similar to the one used in the Lenza attack. The box was addressed to her brother, Richard McGarrell, and 18-year-old Queens resident Stephanie Gaffney, who was 8 months pregnant, was the next victim. On June 27th of 95, she was talking on the phone when she looked in the mail and found a package that appeared to look legitimate. The package was addressed Gilmore Occupant. Gilmore is her grandfather's name. Inside the package was a book. When she opened it, she was struck by shrapnel from 3 bullets. Though her unborn child was not hit, it was in distress and doctors induced labor. Stephanie later gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and she believes the only reason she survived was because she held the book at an angle away from her. On June 20th, 1996, 70-year-old Brooklyn retired real estate agent Richard Vessela opened a package with a video cassette in it that exploded. No one was injured, but the shooting did shatter Basille's window, and what could be worse than a retired real estate agent's window being broken? Police have not been able to determine if the attacks are random or if they were specifically chosen by the perpetrator, but I'm going to go ahead and presume that they were completely at random. Now, to this day, the zip gun bomber is unidentified, and there's no suspects. Psych, a man named Stephen Wavra and a friend of his are also considered suspects in this case. Wavra had been caught creating book devices similar to the bombs, and also Joanne Kipp was his high school guidance counselor. He and his friend also had alleged connections to other victims, and interestingly, records of his friends were found in each of the victims' local pharmacies. However, Wavra was in prison at the time of Joanne's death, and that would be pretty hard for him to make a gun bomb. Now, investigators believe, despite this, that he may have had a friend create and mail the bombs, but I don't know what kind of friend would be like, yeah, I'll make a bomb for you, buddy who's in jail. I don't know, the 90s were a wild fucking time. Well, that does it for all of level 13. Most impressive indeed, I know. Now, without further ado, if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, go ahead and consider subscribing. And until next time, have a great time. Memento Mori.